And it's Ken Kraetzer for Camp Vets Media. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008, and we're glad to get our 2024 season of Army football huddles going tonight. It's been a busy week at West Point, many activities, but first I'd like to welcome Steve Chaloult, calling in from South Jersey, former Army football player. And Steve, your class year again was
1992.
92. That's what I thought. Okay.
Hmm.
And calling in from strategically located Boca Raton, Florida. Is that where you live, Richard? Is it Boca Raton or what town?
West Palm Beach.
You're in West Palm, not too far from Boca Raton, one of the American Athletic Conference outposts that we're going to be visiting in very early September of Florida Atlantic. We've got Richard Miller. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm ready to go.
Well, we're glad to have you and that you're ready to go. And Army football practice is into its third week. They've had a scrimmage on Saturday, in which I have to say the young freshman quarterback, Ethan Washington, stood out as having a lot of potential. A number of quarterbacks played, except for Bryson Daly. He is established as the #1 quarterback, had a phenomenal season, especially great last 4 games of the year when he came back from an injury. But Ethan Washington ran the ball well, showed he could throw, and he's a big guy. He seemed like he could hit the holes. Dwayne Coleman, who was the backup last year, is now a junior. Had an injury, didn't play, but I saw him in practice when I was up there on Tuesday. And then also Cale Helms, a sophomore. He looks like he knows what he's doing out on the field. And so a couple of others. So Steve, what's your impression of the team? And I guess everything starts with the quarterback, but it's really about who's going to back up Bryson Daly this year.
I mean, I still think that that's undecided at this point. Bryson's got such a strong hold on that. I think that they have the luxury of taking their time, and it's not like they're going to rotate any other quarterbacks in there. So, Jeff keeps his cards pretty close to his vest. I'm not quite sure he's ready to name a #2 yet.
Well, it's I would think Bryson Daly obviously has played very well, spoke very well. We chatted down at the American Athletic Conference Media Day down in Arlington last month. And, I didn't see Zach Mundell out very much at practice, but we did see, Cale Helms has been getting a lot of time. Dwayne Coleman was back in practice Tuesday, although wearing a green jersey, not taking any hits at all. And also another freshman quarterback has been playing, getting some time. And but so far, the talk and really is Army's returning to using 2 slot backs in the offense most of the time, and a single back. And really, the key to it is #6, Kanye Udo, the sophomore running back from Mays Landing, had a very impressive freshman year, and he is continuing to look good. And in fact, Coach Munkin said part of his goal is to get him the ball. He's one of those players that can make things happen, and is kind of a key to the Army offense so far. What have you seen of Steve, of Kanye Udo? How does he impress you?
Well, he's got a really great combination of size and explosiveness, and he's also got a little bit of a nasty streak in him. And he handled the primary running, ball handling drills or load last year as a freshman. So, and as a a true freshman. So it's really exciting to know that he is back, and having him in the backfield with Robinson really, I think, excites the heck out of the fans, and it should. I think that they're going to be stout. We got a great center already making some Remington watch lists, and then our quarterback's established and tough as nails. We're going to have a hard-nosed Army football fullback, and then we got these two running backs that have speed and toughness. I'm thinking great things for this offense this year.
Well, that's what my impression has been that they've got a solid offensive line, a lot of returning players, led by Brady Small. I mean, you see him walking at practice. He's got swagger. I mean, for a sophomore, he's got confidence. You can just tell he's got the size, and he's got the respect of his teammates, and he and Bryson Daly did such a phenomenal job last year when they switched, back and forth with the shotgun and under center, and never really had a problem. And then you got Bill Katsianis moving to guard, and you've got players like David Hoyt, Lucas Scott's been getting a lot of time at right guard. Matthew Adogi, Jordan Laws is in the mix, the senior at left tackle. And you know who's back, Steve?
I know. I was wondering when you're going to get to Connor.
Okay, and Connor Finucane is back. He was approved by the superintendent to play and get a 5th year in. And I saw Connor on our day, and he was sitting in the cafeteria, in kind of his dress uniform, and honestly, he didn't seem real happy. But he, Coach Munkin gave a long outline on Saturday of his status, that he had done everything. He had had a medical leave in the spring, and then he came back, and then he did everything he needed to do to meet the Academy's and the Army's physical fitness requirements, and his classes. And he's going to take classes in the fall, and Coach Munkin said the superintendent, Steve Gillen, Lieutenant General Gillen, was so pleased that they said, okay, he represents the Army, he represents West Point so well, let's let him play this season. So he's in training. I don't believe he's had any contact yet, but I'm curious to see if we'll see him out there on Saturday in the scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, he adds such a level of nastiness up front, and that's a huge get for us to have a 5th-year senior get that opportunity to play, and also shore up the rest of this offensive line. When we made the decision to go back to the dual back and kind of they're going to throw the word triple option around, although we know that we're not triple optioning anybody, but that they had the ability to keep the linemen as big as they did. They went because of the chop blocking and all of that low stuff that was pretty much quote unquote outlawed. They're taking sort of a larger lineman approach towards blocking, even though they're running the option. So they wanted them bigger. It's almost like a mixture of an attack and a gap and a zone blocking scheme that's going to be adapted to the option. So it'll be interesting to see, because I don't think we have a lineman that's under 300 that's going to be starting. Big line.
Yeah. I talked to one of the sophomore linemen yesterday at practice. I noticed them out there getting a lot of reps. Number 72, Lane Parks, who's from Oklahoma, and a sophomore, best friends with Brady Small. And I asked him how big he was. He looks like he's 6'4". I'm looking at how much taller he is than I am. He's like in the 6'3", 6'4" range, and 305. He said his playing weight is. So as you said, these linemen at Army are a lot bigger than they were 10 years ago. And Lane Parks is in a 6'3", 300 from Yukon, Oklahoma.
Well,
and
linemen coming out of high school are in such better condition and shape, and they really work out hard, and they're toning their bodies earlier and earlier. So, you got a 6'4", 6'5" body. They can hold 300 pounds and not look sloppy. I mean, I played my senior year, my first year at 327, and I was almost 6'5.5". It didn't look like I was, hugely, in the 300 range because of my height. So, and so we've got some pretty good sized linemen that can move. And, I think earlier and earlier, when I played, I was like 254 as a plebe. As a yearling, I was 289, and then I got to about 3 bills as a cow, and then as a firstie, into that 325 range. This kid you're talking about is 305 pounds as a rising sophomore, and that's legitimate. And they're still having to do physical fitness and other things with the core, just modified slightly. So they have to be able to move and be effective, or they're going to get themselves in a pickle.
Another player that got a lot of time on Saturday on offense was number 42, the senior fullback AJ Williams. He's a good sized player, 6 foot, 244, and was getting quite a few reps in the offense when they, especially I guess shorter yardage downs. Miles Stewart, the senior from New Orleans, at slot back, he was catching some passes. Now, one of the unknowns with offense is Tyrell Robinson, now a senior. We knew how explosive he was as a young player before his serious injury, and then Coach Munkin said he got a second injury that slowed him down considerably. So he didn't play Saturday in the scrimmage. I don't believe he's had any contact. They are holding him out. And Coach Munkin said at least twice that his service as an Army officer is a factor in staying healthy. Perhaps so that is not just to get in shape to play football this year, which of course everyone hopes he gets a chance to play. But his service as an Army officer, he needs to have his, these injuries heal. But we all hope he's back. What do you think, Steve? Do you think he's going to be able to make it back, be productive this year?
But I think so. I definitely think so. It's going to be, as a firstie, it's hard when this is your last year of ever playing competitive football. If we're being realistic, I mean, only very few of our players get to move on to pro, and we've had some action in the preseason with those. But you're going to do everything physically possible to get out there with your brothers as a firstie to play your games. And I could see them keeping him out of the Lehigh game, but I wouldn't be surprised when we head down to Boca that he might suit it up at that point.
Okay. I just want to cover special teams. We talked with Coach Sean Saturnio yesterday. We have the interview up on our YouTube page. And he's his optimistic self. He feels very good about the punters, but in particular, he thinks that Trey Gennady is going to be all set at place kicker this year. And number 96, a senior. He, as I said, he waited the wings with 2 kickers last year. But they see Trey Gennady as the place kicker this year, which is such a fundamental thing considering Army's won the Army-Navy game 2 years in a row with field goals. And I also saw in the game, the scrimmage on Saturday, Anderson Britton, I thought the junior from Georgia kicked well, showed a strong leg. But they were struggling on field goals, I thought, in the scrimmage. I think they missed their first 3. before they started connecting. And so, punters, I got Cooper Allen and a couple others competing. James Wagenseller, a sophomore. Um, so we'll see there. But place kicking is so important. I still lament in the Oklahoma game they didn't get the chance to kick a field goal at the end of regulation when they had the ball down about the 22, 23-yard line of Oklahoma with about a minute to go. But now they are really they've been really confident in their place kicking. Defense. I think, the key, with all of the changes this year is the junior, Caleb Fortner. We talked with Caleb. You talk to him, he's such a long player, the epitome. He's tall and strong, and he's got an eye for the ball. But you know what he said? That last year he started the season as a fourth-string guy, and then he moved up the chart and ended up becoming one of the, making the play of the season in the Army-Navy game. And you've got a couple of guys, Jack Latour on the defensive line, Kyle Lewis, a couple of others, Dre Miller, of course, we talked to. So what are your thoughts on the defense? Obviously, losing 4 senior defensive backs is tough.
Yeah. So, and that's where there are two thought processes on a strong defense. You either have to have a penetrating and aggressive front to make the quarterback get the ball out of their hands and give the defensive backfield a little bit of a chance to make a play, or you have really good defensive backfield play that give the defensive front the ability to get more time towards a quarterback. So, this is a year we've been actually pretty solid in the defensive backfield for a while. And this year, I mean, it has flowed out of the system. Now, I'm not saying we're not strong in the defensive backfield, but we don't have proven talent there at this point. So some players are going to have to step up, and I think they will. But we need to have really good defensive tackle and linebacker play with this group to provide pressure so the defensive backfield can stay on their players and get that ball out early and get a chance to pick it off. So, I'm excited about Caleb for sure. I mean, if you think about linebackers, you think about the Radigans, you think about the Christensen, not as much because he played, I think, as a sophomore, but the Radigans playing as a senior and being opportunistic about their chance, whether or not they were 9th string or 4th string, that they end up, when it's their time to step up and step in, they make the biggest plays on the biggest stages. And that's what, Caleb did in the Army-Navy game. I mean, that was a phenomenal play, changed the tide, and basically really help win that game. Brett, the other middle linebacker, Greena, his dad played as a quarterback, and they're excited. Their family, I talk to them quite often. They're excited for him to get significant playing time at the middle linebacker spot. So
Yeah.
We'll see. We are decent size. We're not big out front. This is a leaner year. This is we're 260, 275 is what it's showing, but I don't know where they are in real life. But we're going to have to, and I think the D coordinator will use stunting and slanting to help put pressure on and get an artificial rush on them to help that defensive backfield mature.
And we talked a little bit with Dre Miller. He's in a 6'3", 265. We talked a little bit about his having to regain confidence after the injury he suffered up at Syracuse last year. Scared us all when he was down on the carpet for almost 10 minutes or so, but he got back and played later in the season. And so he said he's 100% ready to go and should help. One player that Coach Munkin mentioned is having a very good summer camp is Cody Winokur, who is a senior, 6'2", 277 from Smyrna, Severna Park, Maryland. And coach pointed out his play. So we'll see. I think, of course, you got the captain, Max DiDomenico, and as a safety, along with Casey Larkin. We talked to Tommy Zitello this week, and some of the others, Donovan Platt, and a linebacker who is getting attention and playing time is Elo Mondozzi, the sophomore. We talked to Elo this week. He is a sophomore outside linebacker from St. Augustine, Florida, 6'3", 245, good size, and has some excellent potential. So we'll be back at Mikey Stadium. It's on Saturday. It's a 3:00 scrimmage, and that will follow on earlier in the day, a very nice ceremony, the Acceptance Day parade for the freshman class of 2028. They did their march back from basic training on Monday, and we saw them parade in front of the superintendent's house. Did you do that when you were a freshman, Steve? Did you do the march back?
Oh, yeah, I definitely did the march back. But the whole commitment day junior year thing was not a big deal when I was a cadet. It was just like, oh yeah, that was today. Okay, great. They didn't make it into the deal that they make today. And I don't say that it's a bad thing, but it definitely was not something they did.
Yeah. Well, what I like about the event Saturday is all the freshmen come out in their cadet basic training units, and then all of the upper class cadets have marched out onto the parade grounds in their company formations, and upon direction, I think from the commandant, the freshmen march out in groups of 4 or 6 or whatever, and march to the back of the company formation that they're going to join. And it's and they're absorbed in, and they're in their dress uniforms, and they've learned how to carry the rifle and how to march, so they look like cadets now, and they actually officially become cadets. With the ceremony on Saturday. That's 10:00 out on the plain, and looking forward to being there. Well, let's turn to our friend Richard Miller. Richard, what have you been following in college football so far this season?
Oh, what I've been following in college football so far this season, well, I've been following, of course, anything that's been going on with obviously the other teams in the conference, always trying to follow always trying to find stories to follow. Navy, obviously, with the new with the new conference that Army is in, obviously following their teams. Let's see. By the way, Navy. Let's see.
Navy's was ranked 10th in the American Athletic Conference out of 14 teams.
10th. And let's see, is in terms of let's see, men's sports, and let's go over. Oh, I can't seem to get to any articles.
That's okay.
But right now, actually, there were actually other players that. One thing I have been following is that certain players on certain conference teams have actually made a list. If I can find it on here, let's see. Let's see. Oh yeah, like the senior tight end from Notre Dame, and Mitchell Evans, finalists for the Mackey Award. There have been players that have been finalists for the Mackey Award, and I have also been
okay.
Or also a graduate student from Lehigh, Mike DiNucci, and junior safety Nick Pelican named All Patriot League second team. All honors for these players.
Okay, there you go. Well, Steve, maybe we'll run down the American Athletic Conference. We saw the captains and the coaches down in Arlington, Texas, in July, and Army out of 14 teams was ranked number 5 in the preview by Athlon Sports. And good running down, I think Army got a pretty good draw. Memphis rated number 1 in the conference, followed by UTSA that'll be in to West Point this year, and South Florida, who we will not see this year. Tulane number 4, the Green Wave we won't see this year. But what do you think of those teams? The kind of the top 4 in the American Athletic Conference.
Yeah, Memphis has been playing really good football for a while. They've turned that program around. I was surprised that they didn't get asked to move into a bigger conference when all this stuff was going on because of what they've been doing. I don't think academically they do great at Memphis, so that they may have eliminated the ACC. But the Tulane has been, it's had a resurgence and very tough. They play really hard-nosed football. Their coach is really phenomenal. I think that is we're fortunate to not be playing Tulane. I know there's a little bit of a rivalry between their coach and Jeff. UTSA, I think they might be a little bit overrated. They've lost a lot of people. Finally, COVID has flushed through the system, and their 7-year quarterback and everybody else is gone. So, he's closer to Social Security than he is to high school at this point. So we're going to get him on. So I think UTSA, when we do play them, always play them really well. I'm not as worried about them. I think they're a good team. The only thing concerns me about that, it's so late in the season on Thanksgiving weekend, and we may not have a lot of fans there. The core probably won't be there. So that creates a unique need for home field advantage with that. SMU, South Florida, all really good programs. I think we got a very fortunate draw coming out of the gate. I like the teams we're playing. I like the home and away schedule. And I really do like being a part of this conference because we recruit in a lot of these hotbeds, and they're travelable to decent destinations as a fan to go to 1 or 2 games, a year away. And then, I'll be going to Temple, obviously. I'll be going to the Florida Atlantic game. And then I might try to sneak another one in Dallas or something like that. So I love what we've done, and I like this first. And the fact that we're not going to play at Tulane or UTSA or Memphis, or we're going to play UTSA, but Memphis or Tulane or South Florida, we just might play them in the conference championship.
Well, that'd be something for Army to get to the conference championship in the first year. I remember Navy did that one of their first years in the conference. I think it was 2016, and then that was the year that Army beat them when they had to have the conference championship the week before the Army-Navy game. So a little bit of challenge, but the players would like nothing better than to get Army into the conference championship game. You got teams. Rice, Florida Atlantic will be down there with Richard.
Yep.
Richard's going to be scouting Florida Atlantic very closely. And then East Carolina in October. North Texas they'll be coming in November. Oh, excuse me, at North Texas in November, and we'll be out there. Army's played them. Of course, Army played them in the heart of Dallas Bowl in 2016. And what a really good hard-nosed game that was. And
quarterbacks throw it up on the field, and it was crazy.
Yeah, one of the players in that team was at today's event at West Point, Andrew King. the linebacker, and we're talking a little bit about. I've got an interview with Andrew that we'll be publishing soon. And yeah, what? By the way, Andrew just finished law school. I was really proud of him. Finished Fordham Law School this year, and he's after serving as an infantry officer. And so happy for him what he's accomplishing.
He was such a good leader. He was such a great leader as an inside linebacker and an Army officer.
I'll tell you, he looks like he'd go in and play. He still looks like he's lifting the weight, staying in shape. And yeah, but that was a great game against North Texas at the old Cotton Bowl Stadium. I love going to that place. That was so much fun to go to an old-fashioned, 75-year-old traditional football stadium and then come away with a win. That was a neat game.
Yeah, I was there.
And then, of course, we'll go out to Tulsa. Tulsa rated number 12. And we're going to go down to Philadelphia for Temple number 14. Now, it seems like Temple's program is really struggling after having been a powerhouse not that long ago. I know they're trying to build a stadium in Philadelphia for them, but I guess that's a struggle. So they're playing at the Link, which is very expensive and hard to fill. They were doing well when they were challenging Penn State. In fact, I always say in 2016, I think the last time we were down there at the Link, all the Temple people had all of the trappings of big time college football, all the band, music, all the things. They had a big crowd. They probably 35,000 at the game, and then Army just took it to them. It was kind of the launch of the Jeff Monken success era. And that game was over by the start of the fourth quarter. Army just dominated and silenced the crowd. And I don't know if it's going to happen again. I remember some long days against Temple, going back about 10, 12 years. What do you think on Temple? Are they going to be able to turn it around? They seem like, with what's happening in college football, I wonder if they're struggling, with the idea of meeting the NIL requirements of players. And what do you hear?
Well, I'm sure it is a very difficult place to even raise the money for NIL. The alumni is not as strong as you would have on some of the other in some of the other schools. So, you don't have that to attract their campus. And heck, I don't want to insult anybody, but their campus is not necessarily in the garden side of the town. So that makes it difficult too for recruitment. The people that I know, because I'm here in Philly, that went to Temple, loved it. They're very passionate about it, but it's tough for a student, a potential student to come in and see the potential of that school. They don't even have their own stadium to play on. They're playing, in a professional stadium that they'll only open the lower bowl. They won't even have the upper bowl open for the game. So there are a lot of challenges with that. And it takes a special coach, to come in and make that turnaround. And then that's usually a stopping point to go to Baylor or, Nebraska or over to Boston College, like some of the previous Temple coaches have done. So I will tell you that could be, but with transfer portal, you can get better quick, if you can make a team come together. So, we can't sleep on anybody, even though they think, everybody's going to get better.
Well, actually, we at the American Athletic Conference Media Day, we heard the Temple head coach Stan Drayton. I was impressed. He's a very lively guy, said all the right things, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But I can just remember some tough Army games against Temple a few years ago, until that 2016 opener at the Link when Jeff Monken kind of debuted that Army was going to be a successful team and have a great season that year. Then, of course, we have Richard's going to have to keep track of our friends in South Bend, Notre Dame, as Army will be playing them at Yankee Stadium on November 23rd. Steve, any background on how they scheduled this game? I know the Yankees love having Notre Dame there and Army. There was the game in I believe it was in 2010. The first college football game at Yankee Stadium was Army at Notre Dame. It was a Notre Dame home game. It was 55,000 or whatever it was Notre Dame fans. A few thousand Army fans. Turned out to be a beautiful night. It was just gorgeous. The stadium looked good. Notre Dame dominated the first half, and it was a game that I remember the Army captain at the time, Steve Anderson, the linebacker, the real holler guy, if you ever want to meet a holler guy football player, having a very successful Army career, great leader. But he said he went out in the second half and he told his players in the huddle, turn off the scoreboard, don't look at the scoreboard, just play football. Play football the way you know how to play it. And they held Notre Dame to one touchdown in the second half. Even when Notre Dame threw, do you remember they threw a 350-pound tackle at Army that game? You remember that?
Yeah, it was a very big size differential in that game, and it was very interesting because if you go back and watch the tape, and I could see it while it was coming. We moved the ball early against them offensively, and then they came out, I think, in the early part of the second quarter, and their linebackers lined up a yard deeper, and our guards couldn't get to it, and they were able to flow, and they were better athletes than what we had offensively, and they could flow past our guards and our tackles and make a hit towards the line of scrimmage, and they shut us down just because they backed off with the middle linebackers an additional yard.
Yeah, let their speed come to play. And so that's going to be an interesting November because we go Air Force at North Texas, Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium, and then the Thanksgiving weekend game against UTSA. How do you like having a home? It's the first time in my memory that they've had a home Thanksgiving game. They've been playing on the road. They've got to Hawaii some years on Thanksgiving. But as you said, Steve, the Corps gets Thanksgiving as a chance to go home. So I'm not sure it'll be any more. It'll probably be optional for the cadets to get there if they can.
Yeah, that's I guess what the plan is, and they're going to try to bring in some youth groups and some other group outings to get them out there to experience a game at Mikey and try to get some crowd noise and those other things. But it's going to be interesting for sure. I mean, it's a dangerous time of year in New York State, weather-wise, that late. I mean, heck, I've sat through 15 inches of snow in October, I think it was, when we were playing.
Against Fordham.
Yeah, against Fordham. So, I think it's going to be interesting. It usually our Novembers aren't this tough, and it's going to be a murderer's row coming towards the last part of our season. It's going to really, on the bad news portion of it, it's a tough part of our schedule. The good news portion of it is we can really come together gelling by that time to give them a run for their money. Now, I mean, we got to always look at injuries and make sure that we're fresh and we're not dinged up. But I think it could be an advantageous time for us. We just want to have 6 wins as early as possible, so we're not trying to figure out what it's going to look like the last. The Army Navy game doesn't really count for us in terms of 6 wins to get to a bowl game, and these young gentlemen deserve to get to a bowl.
Yeah. How do you see it? It's 8 conference games, and then essentially the 4 non-conference are Lehigh, Air Force, and Navy is non-conference, and Notre Dame. So that's good. I guess every year it's going to be Air Force and Navy will be considered non-conference games, and then you're going to get looks like one team from, I guess it's called the Patriot League, or at least a Patriot League opponent like Lehigh. Bucknell has come in. And then you got the odd kind of national game against the top 20 opponent, Notre Dame. How do you see Army setting up their schedule? Now there's only really a couple of games that they can play with. And how do you see them scheduling those?
I think it's going to depend upon how we play in the conference. If we are going to, as crazy as it sounds, that if we're going to challenge for the possibility of being in the 12-team playoff, I know I sound nuts here, but think about it. Um, there will be teams outside, the Power Five that will get into the playoff at some point. So strength of schedule will play into that fact. So I don't know if we'll, would we have a Lehigh if we could add a UMass to it, right? To give us an additional win against a better quality opponent than what a Lehigh might be. So I think it will have an effect, but it will only matter if we are really truly in the thick of things in the AAC.
Yeah, and then you have a game like Notre Dame, which is kind of hearkening back to the glory days of the 1940s for the Army Notre Dame rivalry. It turns out both my uncle and my father-in-law were at the 1945 Army Notre Dame game at Yankee Stadium. My uncle had just come back from service liberating parts of Poland, and my father-in-law was there I think he said he was about 12 years old and got a ticket and sat out in the bleachers for that one. But a game like that, I mean, it's a low percentage shot. I mean, the Lehigh game is a high percentage shot, and Notre Dame is a low percentage shot. They might pull off an upset, but it's a challenge. Um, the question is, and maybe Steve, you've got the insight on this, on how teams qualify for the 12-team playoff. And it's been a lot of question about how many schools from the group of five, those not in the Power Four, I guess it's still Power Four at the moment, will get in. What's your understanding about how they'll qualify teams, and how many, if there is an understanding that more than one or more teams from the group of five conferences, which the American is one, would get a spot in the playoff?
Yeah, I would think that what would need to happen is to have a team go on a run like UCF did, a few years back in terms of being undefeated and having a quality win, non-conference quality win in there. Like having a win against a Notre Dame would justify that. Now, I don't think that was early enough in the schedule to do that, but you're making waves in which you start getting in the discussion about whether or not you deserve it to go, and that's where it gets interesting for that. But you would have to have that quality win to legitimize your place and just mopping up the rest of your conference. So it definitely is a possibility. But somebody's gonna. I don't think a one-win team in that case is going to do it. I think it would have to be somebody that kind of runs the table.
Yeah, yeah. So your understanding is there isn't necessarily one team from the group of five that will be placed in the playoff. That's not even a given.
I don't think it is a given, and this is purely conjecture. I haven't looked into this at this point enough, but I don't think that would be a given because of, the number that they would need to get to from, you look at the SEC, they're going to have 2 or 3 that are probably a given, but they've got enough teams that there could be fortunate teams that don't play the toughest schedule within the SEC who could be standing there going, I deserve to get in there with 1 loss, even though I'm ranked 15th, right? Because the schedule is a lot easier, but they had a loss. They may have 4 teams, they may have 5 teams in that playoff just because of the pure dominance of that conference.
Yeah, there have been discussions that you could have 3 lost teams still competing or making a case to get into the college football playoff. Just you have so many good teams. Look at the Big Ten. You have Washington and Oregon and USC joining. A league that's already got Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin. When those teams play, somebody's got to lose, and some records. It's going to be a lot harder for teams in the Big Ten or the SEC to get to 10 wins.
Right.
The SEC, you've now got Texas and Oklahoma. So it's just more powerhouse teams, and they will play each other. So it's going to be very hard for a team, unless they're really superior, to run the table and get the top seeding. So it's a lot of conjecture about like how many teams from the Big 12 might get in. Utah is getting a lot of recognition in the preseason polls about possibly being the best team in the Big 12. And then would a group of 5 team make it? And that's really what makes this whole thing fun is, like an NCAA basketball tournament, you have 1 team from every conference gets in. And so, you get the chance for the St. Peter's to run, to go on a run and start knocking off the big names. And so we'll see what happens with this. So many new things with this new college football playoff. How do you like the idea that you're going to have home games at least 4 sites the week after the Army-Navy game?
I mean, I think they deserve it, and I think it's the right way to do it coming out of the gate like that. There will be tweaks, and I suspect within a few years they'll move those to neutral sites. I just didn't think that they had enough time to really kind of bang that out, and it made it easy for them just to say, "Hey, we'll do it at the home team's first round home team's site on that." So. I suspect that will change because there's just so much money that's to be had for a town like a Jacksonville that could have a tourist situation, and then money comes back to the NCAA for the rights to do that, right? So there's a money grab there that is huge.
Yeah,
So
no doubt.
yeah.
It gets a little bit like the NCAA basketball tournament where your team goes on a run and goes and plays 3 weekends. You win the first 2 games, and then you're at one side. Then you go to the second, and then you may travel and go to the second weekend's games. The Elite 8. I've done that a couple of times with Providence, my alma mater. And then if you win, then you're traveling the next week. So you're traveling 3 weeks in a row. And that's a little, that's, it's interesting, for fans to be able to do that. It also has all of the players and support people out of school for a fair amount of time, which is why they didn't have a lot of games in December. It was always thought to be exam time, and wanting to give the everybody involved, all the students, the best chance to finish up their semesters. The other thing I noticed, Steve, is that you can have these teams you have 8 teams play 3rd weekend of December, the weekend after the Army-Navy game, and 4 of them are going to lose, and that's their season. So they're teams that probably would have been playing in a New Year's Day bowl game and have the chance to travel to one of those warm weather sites you were talking about. but they may have lost a game at Penn State or Wisconsin or, you know, in Washington, in Seattle, Washington, or one of those cold weather Big Ten sites, and that's it. No New Year's Day, New Year's weekend game. Do you think that's going to sit well with people that their season is going to end, you know, a little bit earlier than they're used to?
Well, I think it depends. I think it depends on um, when it is during the process and how close it is to Christmas. I think it'll be a relief to not have to travel for a December 26th game or a New Year's Day game for a lot
Yeah.
of people, because it's such a crazy and expensive time of the year to try to travel and then try to make it all work with your families. And to couple, you know, to pile on top of that is that you may not be able to, you know, you may, if you're going week to week, you don't even know whether or not you can I come, you coming over for Christmas? You're like, I don't know, because, you know, if we win, no, if we lose, yes, you know, that type of thing. So it's going to be interesting for all of that. You know, one of the other things interesting about the selection committee, and if you remember last year with Florida State, right? I think Richard was definitely in deep with that, and Florida State versus an Alabama and that type of situation. And I got a chance at Army Navy to have a couple beers with Boo Corrigan, who was neck deep in that process. And while he was doing it, I was texting him words of encouragement, you know, during the process, because he was under scrutiny and he actually had death threats and he had additional security outside of his house at NC State because of the impact of what happened. You know, Texas and all these schools, you know, we're trying to figure out who they're going to be and where they're going to be, and that was crazy. They proved in that process that they were going to take what they thought the most qualified was, you know, who had the stronger team at that particular time versus who had the better record, you know, because, you know, Florida State on paper, undefeated. We did everything they asked us to do, but we still didn't get chosen. But then if you looked at head to head, you know, they were not at the caliber that they needed to be at. So, you know, they've proven at that level that they're going to choose the best team over the best record, which doesn't play well for the group of five, because you could have a 12-win team and still, you know, in that selection committee be like, they couldn't beat a Utah if you paid them, right? So, you know, there's no way that they could beat a Utah. There's no way they could beat an Oregon. There's no way that they could beat a Oklahoma. So which one do we put in?
Well,
And
you know, on that front, and one people
excuse me,
have
Ken.
to, go ahead, Richard.
Steve, Florida State was 13-0 heading into that game. They really got robbed.
I listen, Richard, all day long we could, over a hot dog and a beer, could argue both sides.
Oh. No,
You know,
I'm pointing that out. I'm not arguing.
yeah, no, but I'm not saying that it was the right or the wrong thing. It just was a tough choice, and they showed their hand towards the team they thought, you know. And at the time with Florida State's quarterback situation and everything else, I thought they made the proper choice. I don't think they made the right choice, right? So it was tricky. It was definitely, and we could argue that all day long. But I mean, I thought it was a, you know, it was a good. I don't know. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, pick that scab. But I'm just using that to bring the point up that they're going to choose who they think the better team is versus, you know, what team has the best record.
Okay. Richard, you have any final thoughts for tonight? Next week, we want you to run down the top 25 teams in college football.
Oh, yeah. My final thought is we're getting close. College football in full swing. Oh, the start of another college football season. Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
The
and
games to start.
we'll be down in your neighborhood, second game of the year for Florida Atlantic. Looking forward to that. I hear it's going to be it's a day game, and it's
Yes,
going to be hot
12
out on
noon.
that field.
Oh,
Richard, do you know what kind of field that is by chance? Is it field turf or do they play on grass there? Do you think? Or you can check on
FAU
I think they play in
Stadium.
grass.
that. Oh, thank goodness.
It's grass.
Okay, thank goodness that will make it drop the temperature about 5 degrees. Steve, any final thoughts on how you see college football shaping up? I think we'll save NIL, the transfer portal, for another night.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting. A lot of lines, a lot of underlying themes and other things that are going on with this season coming up. And the conference realignment is going to play huge. SEC's got a lot of buzz with what's going to happen there. And then, the Army portion of it, we have such an opportunity this year, even though we don't have a lot of names on defense, if they come together as a brotherhood and the exciting things, because offensively, we are going to move the ball. It's just defensively, do we come together? Do we hustle enough? And that's why the upfront 8 people, especially FAU in September, we've got to be too deep because we got to roll through that. And you remember playing Coastal Carolina a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
We were dog tired, and people were dropping like flies because and you can only be so conditioned because when it's 95% humidity and 95 degrees, it's almost impossible to catch your breath. But FAU is not going to be easy, and their coach knows it and probably will come out running a no huddle just to run us, to see how in shape we are. So, but I think we can do some special things this year. I really do.
Hey, one other point. We're talking about the American Football Conference. I was very impressed, and I know Coach Monken said the same thing with the conference commissioner, Tim Parenti, who came in. He was at Rutgers, and he was very high energy at the media day. Gave a great talk, and one of the things he said, he said, you got to look forward. You can't lament that there's change from the past. You got to look for new opportunities. And he hinted at supporting a group of 5 championship. And that might be quite interesting. I know everybody wants to, have a chance to be in the big time and in the top level of college football. But might be real interesting to have a couple round tournament where you're playing the other group of 5 teams. What do you think? You're nodding your head on that one, Steve.
No, I mean, if you think about watching sports here recently, we have shifted a lot towards purity. And when I say purity, I think about the excitement over women's college basketball and excitement over women's basketball and how pure that game is versus the pro men's game, which is carries and travels and other stuff and then, quite frankly, call me crazy. I have an 8-year-old daughter, but I would rather watch a college softball game than a college baseball game. Because the young ladies are so spirited. It's a fast-paced game. Every out has a cheer from the huddle, and it's pure, and it's the ultimate in sportsmanship, and it's a great example for my daughter, and I watch it with her all the time. So I think that the group of 5 is a more pure game, right? And there's not all the nil dollars. It's not all, you're getting some transfer portals, but it's not an ends to a means. It's a mechanism to help some people. And I think the passion is a little bit higher because they're thinking about playing for each other versus playing for a contract at the next level. So I think that will show through with a group of 5 championship, and we'll get a niche group with that. And with that, money will come. Tim Pernetti, interesting enough, I played against him when he was at and I actually went to a wedding where he was at, and we drank beers and told Army Rutgers football stories for a long period of time, and is an amazing, motivating individual. I know somebody who worked for him directly when he was, helping the professional soccer league get off the ground. So he's a dynamic guy, a great commissioner, and a great human being. I think he'll do great things, and he's going to be a trailblazer for sure.
I commented to him how impressed I was the last time Rutgers came into Michie Stadium. I think it was 2014 or 2015. Jeff Monken hadn't really built up the team yet, and Rutgers won pretty decidedly. But I'm walking off the field after the alma mater, and I hear the Rutgers band playing, and they strike up the Army song when the Army goes rolling along. With their 100, they brought a 100-piece band to the game, sitting in the south stands. And what a classy, respectful thing to do for the Rutgers band to play the Army song at Michie Stadium after a game. And Tim Parenti said, yeah, he knew all about that. He remembered that well. And he encouraged them to do things like that.
Well, I mean, he had a portion of his staff. His number 2 guy was at West Point for a long time. So there was a kinship between Army football and Rutgers football for a period of time because of Doug Phillips, who does a lot of work with NIL, but was his number 2 at Rutgers. So there was a lot of that crossover. I do remember that game. I believe it was a night game, and I believe it rained.
You're thinking, I remember that game too. It was a different game. It was a little later. I think it was 2014. I think the rain game was like 2009, 2010. Because I was sat in the rain that night. I remember it well.
We had such a great kinship with Rutgers, and Tim played tight end for them, and we had some hard fought battles when he played. So I fully support him in terms of what he's doing. He's an amazing guy.
And we always have to mention when we talk about Rutgers is Eric LeGrand. The player who was injured against Army, the first game at the new Meadowlands Stadium, first college football game, running down a kick and hit Malcolm Brown with his helmet, and neither one of them got up. And Malcolm was okay after, I think he had a concussion, but Eric was paralyzed by the incident. And we see him, he does a lot of media stuff. But it was always kind of, especially when Rich Ellerson was there, because he was a coach of Army at the time, trying to find ways to support Eric LeGrand both medically and encouraging his opportunities in life. So for those of us who were there, remember Eric LeGrand. He's got a coffee shop down in forget the town. It's not too far from Newark. I got to there last summer. And he's always doing, I think he's got a whiskey brand now. He's all sorts of things. And it's great to see. So Eric LeGrand will always be remembered well and encouraged by Army football fans.
Yeah, I'll never forget the hit. It was right out front of me. In terms of, I saw it up close and in person.
Yeah. So I was in the press box watching that. Want to thank our 2 participants in this week's Army football huddle. We'll be doing more. Hopefully, do one next week. Got to get our friend Sam Houston in gear and some other helpers and participants, and maybe find a few more alumni who want to talk Army football with us. So, Richard Miller calling in from West Palm Beach, Florida. Thank you.
My pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich always keeps me on my toes by getting these things scheduled. And Steve Chaloult', thank you for your time. Always a pleasure to chat and hear your insight about Army football. So glad to have you back this year.
Well, I'm glad to be back. Looking forward, counting down the minutes, like 16 days from opening kick, 6 o'clock, Michie Stadium. Be there.
Absolutely looking forward to that. And I just want to thank our one of the groups that we recognize, the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. They provide scholarships and mentoring to children of fallen members of the special operations community, and they do a great job. And so until next week, thank our participants, and thank you for watching. This is a production of Cam Vets Media, LLC. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. Thanks for watching.